see my screen?
Okay, so those of you who stay with me have agreed to be recorded. And we can see your screen.
Okay, let me start this. I always have to move this little box around. I haven't
Yeah,
figured that out yet.
it's not a full screen, but we.
Right. Okay, it's coming up. Full screen?
It doesn't.
Yeah.
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 Okay, Altacal Audubon has been leading field trips to Point Reyes for a long time. I went back through a lot of the old whitetail kite newsletters, and I found a trip. The earliest trip I found was 1966. So they've been doing it for quite a while, although we don't do it every year. Just to see where Point Reyes is. This is Chico. It takes us about 3.5 hours to get there. I don't know where you guys are based out of, but down here somewhere.
Esto.
Yeah, and so here's Point Reyes National Seashore kind of outline. And here's a little bit closer once you get over. We usually go down 505 to 5 and then cut over on 37 over here. And then there's some kind of back roads to take to get over. And we usually stay at Olema Campground, but there's also Samuel P. Taylor State Park, which is actually really nice. It's just a little bit extra drive to get anywhere. And Olema has stores next to it and is only about a mile from Point Reyes Station, which is a really quaint little town now. These are some of I have highlighted some of the main birding spots that we usually go to. And here's the other map with the roads. Kind of about right here is where Olema Campground is. And then this is the main visitor center is over here. And then we drive around, there's Abbott's Lagoon up here, and then all the way down to the point where the lighthouse is. And this is called Drake's Bay. So this is the campground. And up here in the corner next to the title, I put the number of species that eBird has for the campground. So even just the campground has 131 species, which is pretty good. We usually stay in this little section here, which is tent camping and you can have your trailer or your camper van, but with no hookups. But if you're one of the types who likes hookups, all of these campsites over here have hookups. So it's kind of open for everybody. This is a line of like willows and alders and riparian trees. So some of the usual birds we just see right in the campground, which I have a hard time telling the difference between usual birds and cool birds, because some of the usual birds that you see there all the time are kind of cool birds for us because we don't really get to see pygmy nuthatches or chestnut-backed chickadees very often here on the valley floor in Chico. And so they're almost always seen in the campground. And then green herons usually see. One year we went early in August and we got these little fledglings that were right in the campground. And some of the cool birds we've seen at the campground. In 2019, we were driving out to go to the lighthouse and Ken looks up and saw this red bird right at the entrance of the campground, and we stopped and it was this beautiful male talent tanager. We also got a merlin who was like right in the campsite. We were just sitting there in our lawn chairs watching him catch dragonflies. He's kind of trying to choke down a dragonfly right here. And then I kind of check on eBird to see, because we don't always get a lot of interesting birds there, but in the last like 5 years or so, they've gotten swamp sparrow, Williamson sapsucker, yellow-bellied sapsucker, and palm warbler. So I guess if you check out the campground before you go out birding all the other spots, you might get some cool birds. Other interesting things there is we usually get barn owls and great horned owls calling. One year we had hundreds of crows stage in the fields across the highway and then flew to the west over the north end of the campground. Then we always enjoy camping and kind of a traditional oyster barbecue, since we're in kind of oyster country down there. Here's our, hopefully you can see this slide. This is where it messed up last Monday. This is us camping, kind of our camp spot that we have. Then from the campground, it's not very far drive over to the visitor center. And there's a little walk we do that is called the Earthquake Trail. And this is the parking lot over here. Earthquake Trail has 157 species. And it's a really nice little trail. It's really short. So sometimes we do that on Friday afternoon when we get there. And it's kind of got a really nice riparian area through here. So some of the usual birds that we get there are the chestnut-backed chickadees again, brown creepers, downy woodpecker, usually get black-throated gray warblers and warbling vireos. And then one year this wren tit just perched right up for us. So easy to see him. Some cool birds that have been seen there. I wasn't on the 2005 trip, but they did get to see a prothonotary warbler there. And we have seen palm warblers on that Earthquake Trail. Other interesting things about the Earthquake Trail is this is kind of a spot where we always take our group picture because there's this huge California Bay laurel that we sit on and take our picture. And it's the Earthquake Trail. So this was from the 2006 earthquake. This fence jumped 16 or 18 feet. I've seen both in the literature, so I'm not sure, but somewhere around 18 feet, this fence jumped. So you get to see that from the trail. And then I found this slide, which is a San Andreas fault. And when I saw that, I thought, oh my gosh, someday Point Reyes might be an island because it just goes right down the seashore boundary. Limantor Beach, the next spot. So you drive by the visitor center and you go on Bear Valley Road, and then you'll take this kind of a long and winding road all the way over to Limantor Beach. And you actually go over the mountain. So there's some kind of nice pines up here in the top part. And I think there's some trails you can walk on. So here's an aerial of Limantor Beach, this whole area up here. There's also a trail called Muddy Hollow. It kind of goes way back in here along a riparian zone, and it's pretty nice. So Limantor Beach has 281 species. That's quite a bit. It's a lot more than we get anywhere in Chico area. Here's kind of a picture looking out over Limantor Beach. This is our group. And the fish docks are over here, just Drake's Bay. So some of the usual birds, which are still cool birds for me. Elegant tern, almost always see them there. Snowy plovers, which you can easily miss if you're not looking hard. They just look like little balls of sand there. All the gulls, the Hierman's gull, western ring-billed, California, occasionally glaucous wing. Get the common loon, and usually you'll get the Pacific loons too there, and the brown pelicans, of course. And a couple years ago, we went and we saw this flock of birds, and they were going down the beach, and we followed them down the beach for probably about a mile. We were just chasing them and chasing them and chasing them, and they were just getting further and further away. Finally, we were so cold, we just stopped and sat on the beach, and then they all came back the other way, and we got to see all of them. I put down 10,000 sooty shearwaters in eBird, and I didn't even get flagged. I was kind of disappointed in that. Pomeranian Jaegers, and we've seen Caspian terns there too, as well. This is a video, kind of shaky, but as you can see, you can kind of see why I might have put 10,000 sooty shearwaters down. Here's another one just kind of closer, a little closer. You can see them going in and diving. We think they were chasing some herring or one of the other little schooling fish. I'm sure if I had had some sort of expert with me on clear waters, we might have pulled something else out of there besides the city, because there were just so many of them. The Pomeranian Jaeger we've seen there. We also get to see interesting things like jellyfish. One year we had a mother dolphin with her young. Then we go over to Abbott's Lagoon. And this is not all in one day. This is like for the whole weekend. But I'm kind of going from Olima towards the point. So you get back on this road, Sir Francis Drake, and then you would take this road towards Pierce Point, and then here's Abbott's Lagoon here. Abbott's Lagoon has an impressive number of species, 294. That's a lot of different species. You have to park here, but you do get to, I mean, you have to walk all the way out. This is kind of a sandy trail, so it's kind of a long walk, and you kind of have to bring some water and stuff with you. And then this is a more freshwater, and then this is brackish water in Abbott's Lagoon. This was from the bridge. There's a little bridge that goes over right here between the freshwater and Abbott's Lagoon. We had this nice little black crowned night hare in there. And this is actually Abbott's Lagoon. So this is the brackish part. And a lot of times the shorebirds will be way over here. So if you come down, somebody should bring a spotting scope, even though it's a long walk back there. I think it's a little over a mile or something. And then there's some more shorebird habitat on this side where you walk around. Some of the usual birds, we almost always see the quail there. They're usually posing. Western sandpipers, marbled godwits, song sparrows, lots of sparrows, Savannah sparrows, and all the sparrows on the trail. Cool birds. One year we got to see a bobolink, however you say that, and red-necked phalaropes and Baird's sandpipers. And of course, this would be a really cool bird to see, but this is more of what we saw, a female.
So Mary, that's a redneck phalarope. Look at the label again. Go back one.
Oops.
The previous.
What did I? Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
forgot to change that. I
Okay.
labeled that wrong.
Well,
But there was a,
but you said it correctly. Yeah, it's a phalarope. Yeah.
I couldn't even see it because it was behind this little bar
Yeah.
that's up here on my thing. Yeah, so redneck phalarope, not grebe. And one year I looked at, I think it was an 1997 trip. I wasn't on this one, but when I looked up and saw that they had a black back wagtail, I kind of had to look that one up. And then I decided to look the range map up. And it's like, this is where they're from. So they must have just got blown off course and came down the west coast of the United States over here. And that same year, they got a tricolored heron. And in the little trip reports back then in the little newsletter, they weren't really specific of where they saw some of the things. So I was just kind of figuring they probably saw them at Abbott's Lagoon, kind of the best habitat for both of them. Some other cool things we see, coyotes. Almost every time we go out there, we see some coyotes. And then one year we had this beautiful red-sided garter snake. He is really blue. It doesn't show up quite as well in this picture, but he just looked blue and red and black, and he was just gorgeous. The RCA building is not usually all that great of birding, and I heard that they just closed it off right here at the end. But if you do walk this, you can sometimes get barn owls in there and other warblers. Sometimes the warblers are down here at the far end. And this is what it looks like. Almost everybody who goes to Point Reyes likes to go this place and get their picture taken. The old oyster farm. There used to be an oyster farm down here, Drake's Bay Oyster Farm. And after a little while, the Park Service did not renew their lease. So it's no longer a farm, and it used to be better birding when it was an oyster farm. So it's not really that good at birding anymore. Some of the cool birds we've seen: tropical kingbird there, semi-palmated plovers, tropical kingbird, redneck phalaropes, and some of the usual birds were like black turnstones we almost always saw, the cormorants, bluebirds, pelicans, sandpipers. But those are the birds that are kind of missing after the oyster farm was gone. Whoops. Oh, I want to go back to that slide. One weekend we went in 1999, just 2 days, and this is what we saw. All these different warblers. I mean, some of them are normal warblers, but we did get to see quite a few rarity warblers and some other birds. I didn't put everything that we saw on the trip on this page. And then a couple weekends later, we went back and picked up 3 more warblers. So it's a great place for warblers. Drake, and that was for all over Point Reyes, not just one specific spot. Then we go over to Drake's Beach, come back on the road here and come down here. There's a visitor center down there. And this is what it looks like. This is the big parking lot. This is the visitor center. And almost all the really good warblers are seen like right in here. And this is also a really good spot for barn owl. Forget what are they called? The Parliament of Owls. And if you're one of those people who likes to pick up as many species as you can come along a little trail in here and get a lot of ducks and sometimes the grebes in this freshwater lake right here. And sometimes all the gulls will come over here at a certain time of day and bathe in that one. So yeah, these are all willows in here, and then willows and I think pines and some other riparian trees. Sometimes the birds are in here. And then of course you check out the beach and oh yeah, there's this other hot spot that I didn't even know about called Horseshoe Lake. I think you have to walk all the way down this beach to get to it. Some of the usual birds, again, elegant terns, sanderlings, gulls, the barn owl, the loons, scoters. Some of the cool birds we've seen there are the American redstarts, and we've seen males and females and first-year males, and palm warblers, ruddy turnstones, red-throated loons. Of course, when we see them, they're usually looking like this, unless you kind of happen to get there on an early trip, and you might get one with still a little color. And redneck grebes, we've seen there. There's a visitor center and a cafe, and they're not always open, but when they are, and when it's a nice cold, foggy day in Point Reyes, it's great to go in and get a cup of hot chocolate or whatever. So now I go down the rest of the peninsula, down in here. There's 3 different ranches that we stop at a lot. And then there's a couple of, there's one abandoned ranch that's up here further, closer to the RCA radio place. In September 2021, the National Park Service decided to allow cattle and dairy ranching to continue. There was some talk about them ending it like they ended the oyster farm. So they made an agreement and they're going to reduce the number of dairy cows that are allowed. I didn't hear anything about the beef cows, but the dairy cows are going to be reduced. There's going to be stricter oversight on it, and they're going to be 20-year leases. And they are talking about killing elk to reduce the numbers. Although with the drought, there have been lots of reports of the elk dying basically from starvation. There's a lot of elk in some of the areas. They were mostly talking about a herd that's up by Pierce Point, the smallest herd. There's another herd here called Drake's Beach herd, I think. The F ranch is abandoned, and this is the upper one. We hardly ever bird it, but it's actually kind of a nice little area. You have to walk down this road, but it's kind of a nice little area to bird. The Spalletta Ranch, 159 species. Not my favorite one. You get a lot of the blackbirds and stuff in here. And you basically can't bird this little patch here except for from the road. But the Bee Ranch is really good. 262 species. That's a lot. And I would have to say almost all of them are right here in this little strip of cypress or cypress and or pines, I think. And then this pond here. So you can park along the road right here and just get out and walk along this. And this is where a lot of the different warblers we've seen are. Some will be in here, but the majority seem to be in here. And then of course you'll get, you know, the blackbirds and everything else in the main farm part. So yeah, bring your spotting scope. I always check out this pond because you just never know. It's kind of far to see just with your eyes, but you can see if something's down there, and then I would scope it because you never know what you're gonna find. Some of the usual birds, we usually get barn owl in that little strip that I was talking about, great horned owl, ducks, grebes, sandpipers, and shorebirds at the pond, and Townsend's warblers. Some of the cool birds we've seen, black and white warblers, which they look pretty good even in winter. I don't know if they have a kind of winter plumage so much. So that's one of the treats to get to see one that still looks that good. And Tennessee warbler, chestnut-sided warbler, and blackpoll warbler. Here's a picture of Tennessee warbler taken by JT. Here's an orange crown, because I was like, how do I tell them apart? But they are much lighter underneath. This eyebrow stripe is really pretty nice. And the kind of a orange or yellow-green color on the back. The Nunez Ranch, Ranch A, has 252 species, which is still really good. And this one, if you have not been to Point Reyes with somebody else before, what you do here is you park right here next to these cypress, and there's a little path, and you just walk down. Even though you're walking behind these people's houses, this is kind of standard. Everybody walks down this little trail of trees and back, and you can get some pretty cool birds in there. If you bring your spotting scope, you can look down here, but I haven't seen a whole lot of exotic stuff up there. Usual birds, great horned owl. This was just a couple of years ago, I think, this picture. Tricolored blackbirds, red-winged blackbirds, brewers, brown-headed cowbirds. Some of the cool birds, Blackburnian, this is from our 1999 trip, Blackburnian warbler, palm warbler, blackpoll, redstart, and chestnut-sided. So chestnut-sided, this is not what we usually see. This is what we usually see. And even though they're not as flashy, I think that the males in winter still have a little rufous under here. But when you see these guys, they do look really different. And this chartreuse color just really stands out, and their wing bars are really bright. So they're one of the easier ones for me to tell. The lighthouse has 292 species. That is completely amazing if you think about it, because there is not a lot of different habitats here. It is coastal scrub all along here, and then you can come down and see the rocks over. I mean, you can see the rocks from up here on the trail down there. But almost all the birds, all the rarities are seen in these little teeny patch of cypress right here. And most of them are in this little tiny patch of cypress. So it's pretty interesting. Although this point does jut out, so the birds have been flying over this water. If they're taking the shortcut, they're flying over the water, and this is like the first and only trees that are available. So here's the parking lot, and they have it gated like right here. So you have to walk out this way, and then you bird this. We usually bird this pretty intensely. There's probably birders there, already found stuff. And then you can walk out down towards the lighthouse. The usual birds we see there, we almost always see a pair of peregrine falcons. My friend John Seed got this picture of this peregrine with the little sandpiper in his talons. You get that all three cormorants will be down there: double-crested brants, pelagic, brown pelican. Some of the cool birds we've gotten here: black-throated sparrow, 97, ovenbird, chestnut-sided warbler, pine warbler, McGillivrays, Cape May warbler, although McGillivray is one of ours, Connecticut and mourning warbler, and bay-breasted warbler. So we saw bay-breasted on our last trip, but these are the nice male pictures. And this is what we actually saw. This is my picture of the bay-breasted last year. I don't have a great camera, and it's not easy to photograph warbler. And this is probably what the Connecticut warbler looks like. Some other cool birds they've seen: sooty and Buller's shearwaters. They saw hundreds of them from the from the lighthouse trail. And some other interesting things we've seen from the lighthouse trail is we saw these sunfish, and they would come up, you know, those big, round, skinny looking sunfish things. And then they would turn on their side, and we learned that the gulls would come over and eat all the parasites off of them. So that was pretty cool to see that. And here's the stairs down to the lighthouse. So if you're gonna go, I'm warning you, 313 steps. It's about the equivalent of 20 stories high. So make sure your whole group is in shape before you go down there. Saving the best for last, the fish docks. A couple weeks ago when I made this slide, there was 303 species on the checklist for eBird. And I checked back last week and it went up by another bird. So 304 species at the fish docks. That's pretty incredible. But there's quite a bit more different habitats here than at the lighthouse. We have this little place called the New Willow, right here, New Willows, where you can get some of the migrants, the vagrants, rarities. This is the elephant seal overlook, where you can look over, see the elephant seal. And but most of the warblers are going to be kind of and other birds like indigo bunting and orchard oriole. We've seen it right in this area right here. And then you just kind of walk back by this little house. There's an old guard station right here, and you can check out these. Sometimes the warblers are in these, but almost all of the warblers are in this tiny little patch of cypress. I don't know what they like about these certain little ones, but the trail goes right underneath them, and they're fairly easy to see because it's a very small patch of cypress. But you also have the grasslands all up in here, and this Chimney Rock Trail that goes out here. When you get down here, you have some shorebirds, and you can see shorebirds along in here, and then you'll have lots of different birds in here. This is us standing on the trail right about here by this telephone pole over here. And we're on the Chimney Rock Trail taking this picture right here. Whoops. I don't know, my computer doing something. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. Oh, there it goes. Whoops. So some of the usual birds, great horned owls next to the guard station in the trees up there. Always double-crested cormorants and terns on the pier coming out from the boat docks, and black turnstones, loons, gulls, pelicans, scoters, grebes. Usually see grebes out there. So I took this list from eBird. This is not one of our lists, but I was just so impressed. Whoops. At the amount of different eastern rarity warblers that they have. So if you look at this list, I'm assuming there's probably a lifer on this list for almost everybody, unless you're a super good birder from the East Coast or something. So whenever we go, somebody gets a life bird, and that's always pretty exciting. Some of our cool birds, northern parula, that one's kind of a regular, as well as the chestnut-sided. They're pretty much a regular bird too. Pomeranian Jaeger, parasitic Jaeger, Blackburnian warbler we got to see this last September. Blackpoll, American redstart, prairie warblers, orchard oriole we saw. I can't remember what trip, in the early 2000s, I think. And then this is the female orchard oriole, which is what we saw, I think. Blackpoll warbler, black-throated blue warbler. I think also that they don't have much of a difference in their winter plumage. And the Blackburnian warbler. So, but of course, this is what the Blackburnian warbler looked like in September when we went. And this is usually what we get to see the Blackpoll warblers looking like. And one year, 2013, we got to see a blue-footed booby out there off of the Chimney Rock Trail, which was pretty exciting. This is my terrible photo because he was really far away. And so I just put JT's photo in here so you could kind of see what he looked like. Although his bill was almost kind of a little bit blue right here. Some of the other interesting things that we've seen there, we can see river otters, coyotes, the tule elk. They're pretty impressive. Some of the males have these huge racks on them. Last year, September, we saw this whole pod of dolphins, and you always get to see elephant seals there. And this last year, we also got to see a school of tuna jumping in Drake's Bay. They were just jumping all around. So we figured that the dolphins and the tuna were feeding on something. And sometimes the seals get up on these boats, and if enough of them, it looks like they're gonna sink the boats. So recommendations for this area: study your female and winter plumage warblers before you go. This is a page out of Sibley's The Western Guide. So it's kind of nice because they got all the female or winter plumage birds like right in one spot that you can kind of study. Although just watch eBird too and see what they've been seeing. Go for 3 nights and 4 days if you can. It's so hard to hit all of these spots in just 2 nights, 3 days, which is usually what we do. If you're not leading a trip and you can go by yourself, watch the weather and go after or during a storm front from the north. The better weather for birding there is nice foggy day. For some reason, once the birds get there, if it's foggy, they kind of stay there for a while. If it's clear, they just keep continuing on their journey south. Get eBird notifications from Marin County. That really, really helps. I mean, in the old days when we went, we used to have to call the telephone line for the rare bird alert and listen through the whole thing to see where everything was. Much more advanced now with eBird. Bring clothing and camping gear for all weather because you don't want to leave if it's going to rain. It usually doesn't rain all weekend, and it generally leads to better birds. So here's my conclusion. You never know what you'll see, so you might as well go as often as you can. And I got a lot of photos were mine or from these people here, unless they were listed on the screen. Okay, that's